Hi everybody, Maundy Thursday, some thoughts on the text. The text is John 13. I hope you've been able to read that before you listen to this or watch this. If not, press pause, read it, and then unpause me, and then we'll get into that text in a little bit more detail. So a few thoughts on John 13. The disciples don't really know what's going on. Now, there's a lot going on in this chapter, and we can't unpack it all in this one short segment. But there are some things that I think will be really helpful for us to look at today. The first thing is that he washes their feet and then he announces that somebody's going to betray him. So we've got washing, purifying, cleaning that which is dirty, and then this betrayal from somebody so close, one of his friends. Absolute sting of betrayal. So we've got washing and purification versus betrayal and the sting of that kind of pain. Service and pain. Now in other Gospels, Jesus, we see him serving and feeding and healing. In John, what we see is he strips, he kneels, he washes. Not himself, but those who are around him, his followers, and he tells them to do the same to each other. And then he asks this wonderful question, and it's a hard question, and it's one of those questions we should be asking ourselves every single day. Do you know what I have done for you? Do you know what I've done for you? A question for every day. So hopefully today you'll use that question to reflect on what the Lord has done for you. Now, the disciples clearly haven't got the full picture. So let's look at washing and betrayal. In this story, we've got a basin and a towel, and we've got bread which is dipped, bread and wine. And it's not just about Christmas and Easter, although that's what kind of secular society would think Christianity is all about. It's about birth, it's about baptism, it's about teaching, it's about healing, it's about body and blood, it's about the basin and the towel, it's about betrayal, it's about life, it's about death, it's about resurrection, it's about story, it's about journey. That's a long list. And then we get that question, what has Jesus done for us? So feet, let's have a little think about feet. I imagine after Jesus had bathed Peter's feet, that the disciples, knowing that, they've been told to do it to each other, would have been maybe looking at each other quite reluctant to have a go. Nobody really wanting to go first. There's nothing worse than somebody telling you to do something and you're in a room and you're sat there and nobody wants to go first. It's not a nice thought, is it, going first? So Jesus gets up from the table. It says he literally, and the word used is arose. He arose from the table. And now that's the same Greek word that John uses in chapter 5 to describe the command given to the paralytic man. And in 2:20, when he prophetically talks about his own rising. And then in Luke 24 verse 6, where he describes the resurrection. So we've got this idea of getting up from the table. So it's an act of real empowerment to other people. Jesus is the one who goes first. He does it first. So in doing this, there's this foretaste of resurrection. In this story of the basin and the towel, a foretaste of a rising, of resurrection, of going first. Now in 1 Corinthians 11 verse 26 it says, as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. So that's Corinthians 11, 1 Corinthians. Now this passage from John is a bit like Jesus saying, as long as we stumble or walk our way to the basin and the towel, we proclaim the power of loving service. A foretaste of what love means. Just as bread and wine give us a foretaste of heaven, the towel and the basin a foretaste of love and service. Now, Jesus says one is going to betray him, and Peter is absolutely desperate to know who it's going to be, because he can't believe anybody would, not in that room anyway. And he doesn't get a direct response. Now, it's from this narrative in John 13 that we get the Christian belief that this idea of objective evil can infect those that are really, really close to Jesus. And the disciples just do not realise, they failed to realise that Satan is in their midst. Instead, they thought Judas, who is the one who takes the bread, instead they think Judas is left to go and serve the poor or get stuff in for the festival. But betrayal always comes with a real sting. It's a shock, it's an amazement. How could they do that? I can't believe it. I would never have known. These are the things that people say. It's a shock when somebody betrays you because you don't think they ever would. But Jesus knew. And what we miss or fail to see, Jesus doesn't miss, and Jesus does see. So the story of Jesus's experience and that betrayal by Judas is reshaped in this story because it highlights the role of Satan, and yet at the same time Jesus has absolute control over what is happening and what is going to happen. The one who was betrayed took the bread and gave it, a sign and a symbol. And it was a revelation to the others around the table of what was going to come. But those who gathered with Jesus, really, they just could not get their head around it. Judas not only accepted the bread, but have you ever thought that Judas quite probably allowed his feet to be washed as well? It's entirely possible that his feet were washed around that table. So you've got a cleaning, a cleansing, you've got a symbol of Judas receiving the bread from Jesus. All these wonderful symbols, this great imagery. This idea that even the filthiest part of somebody, the feet, washed, cleaned, put right, and then all that just being followed by such a betrayal of magnitude. Now, it's mentioned that Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, in other words, he was linked to a group called the Sicarii, which was a rebel group, and they wanted to liberate Israel from Roman oppression by any means, by violence. Judas wanted Jesus to be somebody that he wasn't. Maybe he was disappointed. He expected what Jesus had come to deliver. Jesus' salvation there was for everybody, including the Romans. And I imagine that did not go down well with Judas. So maybe Judas betrayed Jesus because he was disappointed. He missed the point. He completely missed the point. He wanted things done his way and no other way, and certainly not the way of service and not the way of sacrifice. And it's very, very easy for us to fall into that trap. We all want to believe that people who do bad things, they're just monsters, they're just terrible people, they're evil, they're monsters, all that kind of thing. That is why when somebody that we know or somebody that we love even, when they do something really monstrous, we are shocked because we thought they'd never ever be capable of such a thing. You hear people say, as I've just mentioned, you would have never known to have looked at him. You could not believe she did it. But Jesus knows. Jesus knew then, Jesus knows now. And if you've ever been betrayed, it's a unique pain. It makes you very vulnerable and it can take years and years to recover. In fact, you might be watching this video and still have a very, very raw pain, a raw experience. Why? Because you were betrayed and it hurts. Now, the disciples couldn't see in Judas that Judas would be the person to do it. Now, if the disciples didn't no Judas would do it. They didn't expect Judas to be, I suppose, whether it be possible for him to do it. Then maybe betrayers are not the monsters that we create them to be in our own minds. For centuries, Judas has been looked down upon. Not many people call the babies Judas, do they? We have Timothy's, Peter's, Paul's. We have John's and Matthew's and Mark's. Not many babies are called Judas. If you're ever called a Judas, it's not flattering. You know exactly what somebody's alleging that you've done, or at least what you've been accused of. And yet, if we're honest, if we're really, really honest, as painful as it is, we are all capable of betrayal, of wanting Jesus to do exactly what we tell Jesus to do. And when we realise that's not going to happen, taking our bat and ball home, or leaving the church, or causing a problem, we can respond in really, really unhealthy ways when we don't get what we want, when we don't get what we expect. And many people do just that. Like Judas, completely turn their back on Christ. He didn't deliver the goods, not in the way they wanted or expected. Now, in an era where confessing our sins is more a corporate thing, we forget the personal confessions that we all must make. The pervasiveness of sin in our lives is seen. It's seen by God. It's seen. It's who we have become. Now, Romans 3 verse 23 says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That first word, all. You know, imagine that, capital letters, underline it in bold, in huge font. All have sinned and have fallen short of the glory of God. And tomorrow on Good Friday, we remember the cross was good for us. It was good for us. People like us, all like us, who, like Judas, have betrayed God. We have hurt, we have ignored, we have laughed at, humiliated, targeted, gossiped, lusted, stolen, exaggerated, all those things. In fact, there's such a long list. All the things that we've done which just fall short of everything that we've been created to be. Now, it does not sound like a good thing for a man to be murdered on a cross, we know that. But it's certainly good for us, the sacrifice Christ made. So on Maundy Thursday, there are often emotions of sorrow and loss and fear and betrayal, and we look a certain way towards Judas and we can't believe it, and he did that to our Lord. But there should also be another powerful set of emotions released by Jesus: commitment, conviction, determination, and that question, what have I done for you? If only Judas had sat down and reflected on what Jesus had actually done and what Jesus said he was going to do. But instead he didn't. The what have I done for you was more of, what should you do for me? And that is not the question. So this Maundy Thursday, I pray that you would really think through some of these images: the basin and the bowl, the betrayal, the bread dipped and offered, the reactions of the disciples sat round that table, and what went on in just one night. So may you read that story again. Why don't you read John 13? In fact, continue through. Read, and just see which words, which phrases, which verses just jump off the page to you. What have I done for you? What has Jesus done for you? So have a peaceful Maundy Thursday, and I pray that the Lord speaks in a way that is really tangible to you in your heart today. So God bless and take care.